That a C130J that took off from Agra at around 10 this morning crashed roughly 72 miles near Gwalior. This aircraft was part of the 77th Squadron of the Air Force, barely 2 years old. It has a carrying capacity of approximately 300. That's what our Deputy Editor Shivarur is telling us. We still don't have details about how many people were actually on board this aircraft. We're going to try and find out whether the Air Force has been able to locate the exact crash site. We also need to ascertain whether the aircraft crashed in a populated area or in the wilderness. What we do know is that this was a C130J Hercules aircraft of the Indian Air Force, barely 2 years old. A devastating blow to the Indian Air Force. The plane took off from Agra at around 10 a.m. and crashed about 72 miles off Gwalior. This is an aircraft that is a part of the Air Force's 77th Squadron. It's a new aircraft, something that the Air Force is actually quite proud of. We've also been speaking to defense experts who said that that this is an aircraft which is accident record is actually quite good. It's not too many crashes have been reported so far. Let's go across to our Deputy Editor Shivarur, who's with us now. Shiv, any update?
Simi, no clarity yet on how many people were on board, but we're hearing from the Air Force that there were no survivors on board this aircraft, which means it was a devastating crash. It didn't glide. It probably just fell out of the sky, but no information just yet on how that actually happened. The information we have right now is still pretty much the same, that the aircraft got airborne from Agra at about 10 o'clock this morning.
We're going to try and reconnect with our Deputy Editor Shivarur, who's getting us another piece of news. He's saying that the Air Force now believes that there were no survivors in the crash. Shiv, any details about where this plane exactly crashed, whether it was in the wilderness or in a populated area?
The information we have right now, Simi, is that it happened in probably an unpopulated area. This is not official just yet, but we also do know that the Air Force has deployed helicopters on a search and rescue mission, but very senior sources, even before it becomes official, have shared with Headlines Today their worst fears. They say that the information that they've got about the crash from air traffic control, from the messages on board, and as well as all the information that's been made available, at this very early stage in the inquiry, suggests that there are no survivors in this crash, which is extremely tragic. Now, the critical thing is to get to the crash site. It is our understanding that two Air Force helicopters have already managed to do that. The other is to get the information from the Air Force about how many people were actually on board. Remember, a C-130J usually has a crew of about 5 people. It can be as little as 3 people if necessary, if they need to carry a lot of equipment or extra troops on board. But this particular aircraft was on a routine airlift mission, Simi, which means it was probably carrying some kind of equipment. Aircraft of the Air Force constantly buzz between Air Force stations carrying equipment and personnel. So the number of people on board is going to be critical at this stage. But nevertheless, until we await that information, this is an absolutely devastating blow, as we've been saying here on Headlines Today, because as we reported first, this is an aircraft that is relatively new. It's practically newborn compared to the other aircraft in the Air Force's fleet. It's only about 3 years old. It's based at Hindon, just a stone's throw away from Delhi. These are extremely advanced aircraft. Simi, they're equipped with probably the most advanced communications and navigation equipment ever built. These are aircraft that India, ordered in 2008. They were delivered in 2010. These are aircraft that are built for special forces missions as well as, transport missions. The Air Force has been extremely pleased with these aircraft. In fact, after ordering, 6 aircraft initially, the Air Force is actually on the threshold of ordering 6 more aircraft because they're very happy with the aircraft, their performance, their safety standards. And the C-130 Simi is actually it's a legendary aircraft. It's been built since the 1950s and 60s, even though the one that crashed today is a new generation aircraft, and has a formidable safety record. It's always been an aircraft that pilots have loved to fly. It's an aircraft that the Indian pilots especially really love, because it was one of the first American aircraft back in the Indian fleet after decades of in the Indian Air Force flying and operating Russian aircraft. So at this point of time, we do know that a court of inquiry has been ordered into this particular crash. We've spoken to people both in Gwalior as well as in airport headquarters, and I can tell you that there is a uniform sense of consternation, of shock about an aircraft, with the safety reputation of the C130J actually going down. But remember that there are other factors that may have come into play, including weather factors, possible technical malfunction. So all of these can't be ruled out at this point of time, and they will have to be looked at by the Court of Inquiry in very great detail.
All right, Shiv, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much for that update, Shiv. We're getting us the latest on this story that the Air Force is now confirming that there were actually no survivors in the crash. They're also confirming that the crash took place roughly 72 miles off Gwalior. They've also now started choppers and other aircraft for rescue operations.